Chinese Chery Motor Group's premium brand Jaecoo brings us this mid-sized SUV, the Jaecoo 7. It's a striking thing and no one else in your street will have one, but should you take a risk with an unknown brand? You might be tempted.
If, like fellow Chinese brand BYD, Jaecoo had launched its combustion model in this segment solely with plug-in hybrid power, this car would look quite sophisticated. The BYD reference is intentional because in PHEV form, this Jaecoo 7 shares its plug-in hybrid powertrain with the BYD Seal UDMI model we tried and liked recently. There's a 1.5 litre petrol engine mated to an electric motor energised by an 18.3 kilowatt-hour battery, providing for a reasonable, though nowhere near class-leading, 56-mile EV range figure. Jaecoo, though, wants to broaden this model's reach with more affordable variants you can't plug in, which would be fine if it had an efficient, affordable engine to offer, or ideally a Toyota-style self-charging hybrid. Unfortunately, it doesn't, so mainstream Jaecoo 7s can only offer the somewhat thrashy and relatively inefficient unelectrified 1.6 litre turbo petrol unit we're trying here. This puts out 147 PS and comes in two forms. Our test car has two-wheel drive, which, if the sport drive mode is selected, will get you to 62 miles an hour in 10.3 seconds en route to 112 miles an hour. There's also a four-wheel drive variant, but that's a bit slower, reaching the 62 mile an hour benchmark in 11.8 seconds. In both cases, the engine comes mated to a 7-speed dual-clutch DCT auto transmission, and it's the relative lethargy of this gearbox, as much as the engine, that makes this car feel slower than those performance figures suggest it should be. This transmission's a bit too eager to kick down too, which doesn't help with smooth progress. So if you find yourself captivated by a Jaecoo 7, we can understand why you might feel the need to find the extra for the PHEV version we mentioned earlier. This only comes in two-wheel drive form, but it does have its share of clever tech, a so-called SHS or super hybrid system that uses the engine and the brake regen system to always keep the battery above 0% of charge. So even if you forget or aren't able to plug in, you'll still find the car reverting to electric motion around town. Though, as we referenced earlier, the petrol engine in this PHEV is at 1.5 litres, slightly smaller than that used in the conventional models. The SHS system's total output is of course vastly superior, rated at 204 PS. Enough to get the car to 62 miles an hour in 8.5 seconds en route to 108. The car always starts under EV power, and you can drive in pure electric mode up to motorway speeds, or with the engine and motor working together in unison. When the engine cuts in, it does so pretty seamlessly. It's a pity that Jaecoo isn't also offering the larger battery version of this PHEV setup, which in the comfort spec version of the BYD Seal UDMI can take you up to 78 miles. The only area where this conventional 1.6 litre petrol Jaecoo 7 model holds an advantage over the PHEV is in terms of handling. Predictably so, since the plug-in hybrid version has to carry around a curb weight of around 1.8 tonnes, so was never going to feel as light on its feet at speed through the turns as its lesser siblings. Not that many Jaecoo 7 drivers are ever going to be putting those differences to the test. The relative lack of steering feel, combined with the amount of body roll you get through the corners, is an effective deterrent to daring do through the bends. When the Chinese makers are finally able to properly benchmark and match the best European, Japanese and South Korean rivals in this segment, they really will be a force to be reckoned with. Here we'd hoped for better, especially as the suspension is a little on the firm side, not uncomfortably so, but enough to feel potholes and speed humps quite keenly, more so than in that rival BYD model I just mentioned. It's certainly nothing like the supple springing you get in a Tiguan. Still, this Jaecoo would be an acceptable school-run commuting companion, and it has some nice touches, like a clever surround view camera system that's able to provide images of the road beneath the wheels, so you know how close they are to curbs and similar obstacles. At the wheel you sit quite high and commandingly, certainly compared with some of the less SUV-like crossover segment rivals Jaecoo wants to compete with. Sight lines are great across the flat and square bonnet, making narrow lanes or in-town manoeuvring simple. Light off-road work is aided by 200mm of ground clearance and a 600mm wading depth. There's a strange touch too. When you switch drive modes, the in-car assistant will tell you so. So switching to sport will be accompanied by a voice announcing sport mode. You might find that a little irritating after a while. No one in your street is going to have anything that looks quite like a Jaecoo 7. The rock-in-river design ethos that apparently inspired its styling will be divisive, but it's certainly different. And it rather distracts your attention from something arguably more interesting, the brand's chosen dimensions. The 4,500mm body length, emphasised by these subtle silver roof rails, doesn't easily pigeonhole this car against the established mid-sized SUV opposition. At the front, the blocky, imposing front end with its enormous vertically slatted waterfall-style grille makes quite a statement and is nothing like anything else in the segment. Flanking this appendage are thin daytime running lights with Audi-like square LED elements. The main headlights lie further down. So, extrovert on the outside, but as the door handles spring out to meet you on your approach, you might wonder what it's going to be like inside. Well, you might not be quite as taken with the cabin, with its curiously shaped wheels, strange aircraft-style gear shifter, and a beyond classic design theme based around quite a commanding driving position. A tall centre console and this huge portrait format touchscreen. You get a digital instrument screen, of course, at 10.25 inches in size, which you might initially think looks quite smart, though it does throw rather too much information at you with small fonts that are difficult to read at a glance. We mentioned this portrait format central touchscreen powered by a Snapdragon processor. It's 13.2 inches in size in this base two-wheel drive model, but grows to 14.8 inches in size if you opt for a four-wheel drive or PHEV variant, which means you gain an upgraded built-in 8-speaker Sony audio system. Thanks to the boxy shape and the quite lengthy 2,672mm wheelbase length, rear seat space ought to be a selling point. Actually, it doesn't feel as spacious back here as the external dimensions suggest. It might, but two adults should be pretty comfortable, though unfortunately this bench doesn't slide, nor does the backrest recline. Despite the standard panoramic glass roof, which gives this part of the interior a light and airy feel, headroom is a strong selling point too, even for 6-footers. Once the tailgate's open, it's clear that rear seat room seems to have compromised boot space a bit. But this 412-litre space should be just about sufficient for the needs of most families. Folding the rear bench extends the space available to 1,335 litres. You shouldn't have particularly high expectations for efficiency when it comes to the 1.6-litre petrol Jaecoo 7 models. This 4-cylinder engine is something of a stopgap and will probably be eventually replaced by a hybrid. Even driven exclusively in the car's most frugal eco mode, it manages very unremarkable figures, rated in front-driven form at 37.7 mpg on the combined cycle and 169 grams per kilometre of CO2 for this two-wheel drive model, which at the time of this test meant VED road tax payments of £1,360 for year one and £195 for year two. We've struggled to get much more than 30 mpg in regular use throughout this test, which, to give you some perspective, is about 10 to 15 miles worse than most conventional brand rival models we've reviewed. As you'd expect, efficiency takes a dip if you go for the four-wheel drive version. It's 35.3 mpg and 182 grams per kilometre of CO2 with that model. All of which might encourage you to find the extra the brand wants for the PHEV version. With a 60-litre fuel tank, that plug-in hybrid has an EV range of 56 miles, which gives a combustion and EV combined range of 745 miles and a combined fuel economy figure of 403 mpg or 47 miles per gallon with the battery in a high depletion scenario. It delivers emissions of 23 grams per kilometre of CO2. The plug-in hybrid model, C80L made, 18.3 kilowatt-hour battery can be DC fast charged at up to 40 kilowatts, which allows it to charge from 30 to 80% in about 40 minutes. That's not particularly fast. For perspective, we'll tell you that a rival Volkswagen Tiguan e-hybrid PHEV can charge its larger 19.7 kilowatt-hour battery from 5 to 80% in just 26 minutes. AC charging this Jaecoo from a typical 7.4 kilowatt home wall box will take 6 hours and 30 minutes. Customers will be attracted by this car's distinctive looks, its generous equipment levels and its spacious cabin. There's affordable pricing too, though much of the benefit of that is undone on this conventional petrol model by underwhelming engine efficiency. The drive dynamics too aren't quite up to those of more established rival models, and you might also, like us, doubt that this car really is quite as premium as Jaecoo thinks it is. Maybe it doesn't matter. If you like the look of this car, don't need pin-sharp handling, and perhaps find yourself attracted by the SHS plug-in hybrid version, you'll probably find it to be refreshingly different, which the Jaecoo 7 needs to be to stand out in such a crowded market.